we are not finished. We are having the last session now, and the last session is all about the world of commercial models. It's a topic so many sessions have more than alluded to. They have brought up, they have talked about these sessions, the topic so much. And just to make it very clear that this session is not just talking about commercial models for SMS or RCS. If our speakers, if any of you have questions, whether it be voice, chat app commercial models, any commercial model for any channel in business messaging, this is what we're here to talk about. So joining me in person are, well, I was going to call you Adam, but it's Waheed, Adam to his friends. Waheed, Adam from iTouch Messaging. A very warm welcome. From South Africa. Pat Flynn from Nettzer. Nice to have you with us. Glad to meet you. Yeah. Known Pat for a number of years as well. From Nettzer. And joining us online, fingers crossed. Yes, okay. So we have Vladimir Smal from LANCK Telecom. We've got Bernd Heinen from Telefonica O2 Germany. And Kim is connecting to audio. Kim is from Gambia, and this could be the internet side of things I was talking about. But hopefully we'll get Kim online very, very soon. So let's go through the introductions. Most of you certainly know who this gentleman is. Most of you will probably know who this chap is, and Vladimir. But it doesn't matter. We assume nothing. You might be new coming along to this session. Waheed, introduce yourself, your background, what you've done, and what you're doing now.
All right, so...
and Kim, warm welcome. You're on. Yeah. Yeah. Excellent.
All right. Waheed Adam is my name. I have a board role at MEF, and I have had it since it was the EMEA board to begin with, and then folded into the global board. So I'm now part of the board and have been for the last 4 to 5 years. So that's my MEF hat. The other hat I wear is I'm executive chairperson of iTouch Messaging Services, a brand that began in the mid-90s, 95, back in South Africa. And today we are very much present around the African continent, rather experts on the African continent. And you use that word very lightly, expert, but Africa is a complex environment. It's certainly not one continent, therefore, one sort of rules. It doesn't work like that. 54 countries, and each one's got its own complexities. So we work across a number of the countries over the continent and have done for a long time. So as an aggregator, we serve a lot of international aggregators that want to do business in Africa, but we also serve the enterprise market from a big focus in the financial services sector, the banking environment, but also the retailers and the small enterprises.
Fantastic, exactly. So you know all about the previous session. Exactly. Pat, your background, what you're up to now.
Yeah, so I've been in the industry for a long time, without making any jokes.
I was going to say grandfather.
Yeah, I know. Well, this guy, I did a podcast with him last week. It turns out he does comedy on that side. So it was great fun. But yeah, so I'm Pat Flynn. I've worked in the SMS and messaging related for about 25 years, but prior to that, I worked in engineering, telco systems in America. First of all, I admire everyone here for their stamina. It's the last session and last day, so you guys deserve a little bit of applause, so thank you. I'll just tell a quick story. When I joined Aldiscon, which was one of the, Aldiscon and CMG were the early SMSC vendors. Our first system was about the size of the lectern over there. It was a 2-meter cabinet. And we had great difficulty getting more than 1 message per second through it. Now, I can tell you a cabinet like that today would probably do 100,000 messages a second. So anyway, it just goes to show how far the industry has come. It's quite amazing. Today, I'm a co-founder. I'm a co-founder in my past life of Open Mind Networks. And I'm a co-founder of Nettzer. Today, we do mobile identity, KYC, onboarding. Apropos the conversation about fraud, we're working with a number of operators to allow them to remotely onboard either individual customers or SMEs with a high level of assurance that they are who they say they are. So that's my promo done, but I'm looking forward to this session.
Thank you. I know this session is all about commercial models, but if our speakers and if anyone else has got any questions about anything business messaging, we can go a little bit rogue and a little bit wild and
love that.
Cover beyond commercial models, because this session is really here to put the whole event together. So, Vladimir, LANCK Telecom, welcome.
Hi everyone, my name is Vladimir Smal. I am from LANCK Telecom. I'm head of sales and procurement within the company in global messaging, which obviously include SMS. LANCK Telecom is an international voice and SMS carrier, so we've been in the business for more than 20 years now. In SMS, we have been working for more than 7 years, and my personal background is voice business for 10 years and then another 4 years in messaging.
Fantastic, thank you. And Bernd, yourself, over in Germany.
Thanks a lot. Bernd Heinen, responsible commercially wise for business messaging, SMS and RCS on Telefonica Germany, working closely with the other operators locally but also on international level to have alignments here in place. And my background is also 20 years telecommunications, inside and outside of the operator world.
Fantastic, we'll come back to that, the alignment side of things, because we had Sean Kildare from Orange France on a bit earlier. They have the organisation, the AF2M, which brings together the operators and the messaging companies. And the operators in Germany have done a very good job of aligning themselves, helping with commercial models. But we'll come back to that. So start with you, Waheed. You mentioned... Oh, sorry. You're hiding. Kim, thank you very much. Kim from... hello.
Hi, Kim.
Kim, can you hear us? You all right? You're on mute.
Yes.
Perfect. Sorry, shame on me, shame on me. Kim Buller, who's the President and Chief Financial Officer of Alchemy Telco from Gambia. A very warm welcome. Introduce yourself and how long you've been in telecoms and your background before. Because you've got a very, very eclectic career.
Well, my background is in agriculture in the UK. And I originally came to the Gambia on holiday many years ago and started a groundnut trading business, which was incredibly difficult because there was no communication. So along the way, I set up Alchemy with my business partner, and here we are today, slowly increasing our volumes and trying to educate people about the value of SMS in an environment where it is actually the only reliable form of communication.
Now that's what I call having a situation, there being a problem, you know the implication of the problem, but you've got the solution. So you created the solution, a messaging company. Fantastic.
Yes, we did.
Fantastic. Can you just explain a little bit about the Gambia and the market in the Gambia? How many people there are there, the internet penetration side of things, just to frame what we're going to be talking about here, the number of mobile operators?
We only actually have just over 2 million people, but we do have over 110% mobile telephone penetration. The reason for this is that we have actually got 4 mobile networks in the country, and on-net and off-net costs mean that people will carry more than one SIM card.
And you're soon to have a fifth, I understand, as well.
Pardon?
You're soon to have a 5th mobile operator, I think. Is that correct?
Yes, Telecoms is just launching.
Wow.
Now, for us, Gambia really has been a testing ground. Thank goodness for 2 million people, when you make a mistake, you don't lose quite so much money. But we're now registering in Senegal and Sierra Leone.
Okay.
My objective really is to connect locally with MNOs to provide local services and hopefully get reasonable international rates, which will enable direct routes into the countries.
And this is what we're coming to. So it's real development. There's digital transformation, but there's real development from the grassroots. And that's exactly what you're doing in your company. And Waheed, that's what you've done in your company in South Africa and beyond, now all over Africa. So how did you get into talking about commercial models within MEF? Where did it come up and what did you do? And what did you end up creating, actually?
Well, I think, we're talking about Gambia, we're talking about the SMB environment, which is what Kim is actually stimulating there. And Africa has those complexities. We have an international client, a banking client, that has branches over many different parts of Africa. So it's a client of ours. And we ended up having to literally, on a monthly basis, increase pricing to them, to the point that they started mistrusting iTouch and say, well, you know, you keep putting your prices up, what's going on? And we were going, well, it's not us, it's the MNOs. And we had to then explain this whole international hub model that the MNOs had created, and in so doing, decided that any international company that was dropping messages within the country had to then go via the international hub, and the pricing was very different. And I think to Ricardo's point of the earlier channel, when when he was talking about, you know, you're charging 1 cent, and then all of a sudden you're charging 11 cents. And that's literally what happened within a space of 3, 4, 5 months. Is it went from 1 cent to 11 cents. So what did that do? I mean, it created the mistrusting relationship between firstly the banking client, the enterprise, and us. And two is that it got to a point where we just didn't know what the price was and had to, you know, be on top of that on a daily basis, so that we don't end up losing money, because the banking client just didn't want to pay the increase within 24 hours. And that's the kind of time limit we were given.
So this wasn't just one mobile operator doing it, multiple mobile operators?
Multiple operators, absolutely. And the key part of this, what they sort of said it international company was, the description of each MNO was different. So one MNO will go, all right, if you're an international company, but you have an office locally serving the local market, we'll take a different view. Another one said, well, it doesn't matter if your ownership is international, well, that's it. And I'll give you one example. So coming back to this banking client, they're serving the community in country. The management of the bank was local, and they had a registered local entity. Yet the MNO decided that they were an international brand, an international company, and were then subjecting them to the high price. They, in turn, increased their, or rather reallocated budget in order to explore alternative technologies, because it was becoming ridiculous in terms of the pricing with SMS.
But that's not their key business. They're a bank. They're there to service their customers, and they're suddenly starting to think, hey, we've got to do something about technology.
Yeah. And it was exploring other technologies. So what is going to replace SMS? Because we're certainly not going to be subjected to that pricing. I actually got the MNO in this case, the banking client, and myself into one virtual call and had the discussion. Needless to say that the MNO was red-faced. It's the color of the brand, but it was red. They were red-faced. And
Which one is that?
Very good. Yeah.
And the irony of it all is that the MNO themselves are internationally owned. I mean, they're not a local MNO.
Yeah.
They're an international brand. So, yeah, red face and all, they managed to give a little discount, but it's still just changed the landscape.
Okay.
And now the banking client has got other technologies they're launching.
Yeah, Waheed's being very shy, so he was one of the, it was Waheed and Anurag from the previous session. They had the idea for creating the commercial models group within MEF, and the initial focus was on Africa. I joined, and I thought, why are we just talking about Africa? This is relevant to everywhere.
I realise it's a global issue.
It is a global issue. So I'll just now go to Bernd, cross over to Germany and Bernd, because you're a very active member of another commercial models group that I run, and that is what?
Yeah, that is around RCS, right?
Yes, there we go. We've got another RCS panel here. There we go. Yeah, because guess what? The same issue is there. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So when we talk about rich business messaging, I mean, before I joined Telefonica, I was with Sinch and was working on RCS for a while, internationally wise. And I saw from that inside out already the complexity of having some operators launched, some not, some with various different business models. So when I joined Telefonica in Germany, my first initiative was to align with the other operators in Germany on a cross-operator approach, at least on the business model, for sure, not on the pricing. That's regulatory issue, so not allowed. But at least it took a while, I guess a year. That until end of last year, we now have all three operators the same session model in place, for example.
That's 24 hours.
Then,
yeah.
24 hours. Till then, one of three have had a different definition, which was a big hurdle in getting things off. So yeah, a lot of things, a lot of talks, and we have now a joint approach. We have a joint website. We have joint, marketing initiatives around promotions, and I think we are now good to go. We are listening very carefully to the market demands. We're trying to be very close to our aggregators and partners. And yeah, from that perspective, I think very, very needed initiative to become success with whatever you launch, right? If it's RBM or different things like identity or you name it.
Perfect. Now, in a previous session, it was actually Ellie's session sponsored by XConnect. They were looking at the whole area of numbers, and the whole area of voice came up, and the whole change in voice wholesale. So, Vladimir, you've been very much involved in voice for many years yourself, of course, SMS and other areas of messaging. But we heard about the so-called A-based charging, the move to charge voice calls, not on where a call is being terminated, where someone is actually dialing to, but where they are sitting at that moment in time for charging purposes. So this whole issue of commercial models is very relevant to voice as well, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely it is. And well, actually, this whole thing about OBR that was introduced by European operators was, in fact, a response to the extremely high rates that were introduced before by the operators in the developing markets, like Latin America, Africa, Asia, etc. So what operators have realized, operators in Europe, what they have realized is that they keep on paying, and they keep on paying more to the operators in the developing market, and from their side they were keep on reducing the cost for voice termination. There was a common strategy within the European Union to actually reduce the cost and make it cheaper and more available for the whole globe. But then they realized that this is so much imbalanced, so they decided to introduce this A-based routing, origin-based routing based on a number from where the number is coming, and this was later on adopted by operators in other countries, in other continents.
Fantastic, thanks. Kim, in Gambia, can you just explain what's been going on with the commercial models and mobile operators? Let's take the most basic thing. How much does it cost to send an A2P SMS into the operators? What's the landscape been like there in the past, let's say, 12 months? What's going on with the commercial model there?
We go and negotiate directly with each of the MNOs, and they set a purchase price for us. Some it will be on volume, so the more we buy, the cheaper it becomes. We had a situation with one of the operators here this year where their number of SIM cards is very low. They set a 3-month limit, so we had to spend a certain amount of money, which would buy us a certain amount of SMS, and if we had not used them in the 3 months, we would lose them. Now that realistically, on the numbers that we were projecting, would have meant that we would have actually been selling their messages at a loss.
That's actually something that I experienced myself 10 years ago. That was something very familiar 10 years ago, but you're still seeing it. Yeah. Yes.
In actual fact, we were able to move very quickly. They've merged with an aggregator, in actual fact, and I went directly to the aggregator. And now they're coming to us saying, hey, look, can't we do business? But they just seem to have this completely blinkered view that we're around not to increase their sales and resell for them and do all the work for them. They think for some reason we're going to be taking away their business, which is just not true. We're not a mobile operator. So often they don't make things very easy for us at all.
So there's the lack of understanding about the opportunity. Pat, you've travelled the world, you've been involved, you lived in America before as well. Your businesses over the years have been truly, truly global. So you've liaised directly with so many mobile operators. That's what you do today in your business. You're talking to mobile operators about digitally onboarding their clients.
Yeah.
Does what Kim is saying now, this is an example today in a country with 4 mobile operators serving just 2 million, soon to move up to 5. Does that ring true from what you're seeing?
Yeah, well, let me just say, because I'm not directly in the aggregator business, maybe I can be a bit more blunt.
Yeah.
I think operators really need to look at where they're going in their strategy. This is not personal to any operator in the room, please. But the operators are looking to move from telco to techco. But really, what a lot of the aggregators are marketing codes. And I think it's a stretch for operators to think that they can service and provide the range of options to the SMEs around the world that the current aggregators or even CPaaS providers are doing. Maybe the bigger, ignoring the large brands. So really, they need to recognize the value the aggregators bring to the table. And they will never match that. And I know this from talking to operators for years. We're going to start an initiative to do this. And in my cynical eyes, I just go, sure. And then years later, nothing happens, right? So I said it was going to be blunt. Operators are good at what they do. They have a big retail marketing brand. They capture people's imagination. You land at an airport somewhere in the world, there's operator ads everywhere. That's the business they're in. They're not in servicing SMEs with a fantastic range of services. On the other side, one other addition to this is, and I know you're doing this, right? But the aggregators, I believe, need to look at the added value they can bring by the data they have. They have a lot of metadata. It's quite difficult in a way if you're not used to know what to do with that metadata. Ignoring issues like they're not regulated in the same sense.
So Pat, for those watching out there, this is recorded, it's going to be watched so much again in the future. What do you mean by metadata?
Okay, so metadata is data about data, obviously. So for example, an aggregator may know that this particular MISDN receives a lot of promotional message that would suggest that MISDN is a student. So for example, an aggregator could have a student package, by inference, and that would, within the terms of the digital advertising industry, that wouldn't be a violation of personal privacy. So they could go to their enterprise and say, do you have any offers for students or housewives or, what I'm saying is that using the metadata, you can segment and target blocks of customers for the enterprises. And you can do that everywhere you serve. And we're not going into detail because it's too much detail. It's quite an interesting area, and I think you're looking at doing this as a future group in MEF. So there's the 2 parts, I think, to it are like, look, operators, you're not going to ever meet what the aggregators can do, like this guy. This guy started off selling bangles in school, so believe me. And then but at the same time, you probably need, and this is a difficult ask even for, fast-moving companies, is look at moving your business model to add value and move up the value chain.
Okay.
May I comment on that?
You may, then
Okay.
you knew who I was going to go to
Sorry.
next, Bernd, from the mobile operator panel. But go on, Waheed.
All right, I just want to add to that, right? In South Africa, we're facing that. The MNOs have literally set up entities outside of the network, owned by them, and have gone after the enterprise business, right? And I won't get too controversial here, but even in what is deemed anti-competitive pricing, and have actually gone for the enterprise market. And they've taken a lot of business away from aggregators, to the point that some of those customers now that have left, direct to the MNOs, are saying, can't wait for iTouch to come back because we just don't get the support and service. So just to add to that particular point.
I 100% believe that.
Okay. Bernd, you've heard what Pat's had to say. You've heard what Waheed has had to say. So Pat's coming at it as a general global thing. Waheed from the countries he operates in, obviously coming from South Africa. You are in Germany. You've been in Germany, working in Germany a long time. What would you say to everything that's just been talked about in the past 5 minutes?
I think it's absolutely right. So we have a lot of data, every operator themselves at hand, and it's difficult to find proper business models to sell that kind of data without touching data privacy and all the other issues where operators are very keen to take away from, to stay away from. But we are doing things around that, like with the identity services, with the MS-ISDN match, with all these KYC things that we are now developing. And I think in Germany we have launched now with all three operators around these models. But we are also working, as said, on the rich business messaging, or also still on the SMS end to maintain that business and to operate and to make things clear, as you said, Waheed, that when in some countries price will increase from 2, 3, 4 months from 1 cent to 11, this is something that brings huge customers like Google to the table, to us, and ask for a kind of a lock deal, for example. So to avoid that kind of price decrease or increase at the end, right? So we are working with Facebook and others to say, hey, look, we are locking your price for the next 3, 5 years. You're committing to this and that kind of volume, but we are not signing directly the connectivity with you, because you are free to choose whatever aggregator you like, right? I'm not able to handle all SMEs. I'm not able to handle all large or medium customers myself. So I'm happy to have partners at hand, like Sinch, like Link Mobility, like whatever, who does the business, who does aggregation, who does the fraud and risk management in between. And then we can speak about things like volume deals or rebates or incentives. But at the end, also the big ones are coming to the table when in other countries things happen, as you explained, with the South Africa one.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Bernd. Vladimir, over to you. Can you just give a bit of background to the audience here? Just say the world of, let's take the world of SMS. What kind of price differences are there between domestic and international pricing in countries? What factor of difference are we talking about?
Yeah, sure. Well, there's a huge gap in between local or national rates and international rates. Like as an example, in Kazakhstan, the international rates are coming to 10 cents, while the local rate is below 1 cent. So the difference is really huge, and in many cases, as Waheed just mentioned earlier, it is not really clear what is to be considered as international and what is to be considered as local. So it could really vary across one country as well. So like one operator might think this one is international, another one consider it local, etc. And then the SMEs or OTTs will come to us, to aggregators, asking us for a solution to bypass this huge rate difference, to find an alternative solution. So they're then starting to ask for gray route. They're starting to ask for alternative OTT channels, whatever, voice channels to deliver the codes, etc., etc. So it's really becoming critical in many cases. And I wanted just to give a brief on what we've seen in the SMS market. I have already done it during our webinar earlier this year. So we are having, let's say, an estimation of average costs that we pay per SMS internationally. LANCK is an international company. We aggregate traffic all over the world. So like if we look at 1 year back, like May 2021, our average cost was 3.5 euro cent, roughly. So if we look at last May, the cost has increased 5 cents on average, which means it's more than 40% growth in cost on average for all international destinations. I've also said during our webinar early in February that I forecast there might be rates crossing 20 cents by the end of 2022, but in reality it happened just in 2 months, in March. So now we already have the SMS rate which exceed 20 cents, imagine. So I don't know who's gonna pay, for how long the international brands are going to pay for that. but I assume not for a long period of time.
Okay, thank you. Kim, when you're talking to enterprises in Gambia about getting your solution out to them, price everywhere obviously has a key role to play in everything. But how easy is it for you actually to get across the price if there's all this uncertainty in the market for you, with not knowing what the operators are actually charging, because is it a 3-month deal, you've got to do this, you've got to do that? How do you approach the commercial model with enterprises in Gambia? So how do you, in plain language, how do you price messaging in this environment, which is constantly changing?
Well, I don't have a problem within the Gambia because our relationship with the MNOs is quite close.
Okay.
Once we've got a rate, then that seems to remain reasonably stable. My problem is if I want to go into a larger market, and I find that the whole classification of what route somebody is selling and the price they're selling it at to be incredibly confusing. We have a policy not to use a grey route, and we're trying to develop our company as a 0 to 1 hop. That's what we're trying to do. But if I can't get real information from another CPaaS or aggregator as to what they're selling me, then it's very difficult for me to think about selling that on. It doesn't seem to me that if it's cheaper, it's worse, and if it's more expensive, it's better. There's wholesale, there's international, there's this. It seriously confuses me. And in that instance, I've kept us very much, somebody might say, have you got a route for such and such? And I can think, well, yes, I have. But I tend to stay away from it because until I'm really clear on it, I don't want to fall into any traps. And that's why I'm looking to develop the business within the EQOS area, register locally, get my local connections, hopefully get a sensible international agreement with the MNOs, and then be able to sell that. And that's kind of my business model. And I know it's maybe not very adventurous, but now I think I would be very proud if I had managed to do that.
Well, localization is the way forward, and that's how the largest messaging companies in the world who've been represented this week in this room and online. That's exactly how they've approached it, localization. Having a local presence and negotiating locally, getting those direct connections. That's the way to go. Yeah.
The saddest thing for me,
Waheed.
listening to Kim, is she's there to stimulate the country's economy, number one.
Development.
Right? Now, we know MNOs have, and maybe Bernd can confirm, CSI programs. So they promise to stimulate economies.
So CSI.
Corporate social responsibility programs, right, to help stimulate economies. She's doing that for them. Right? And if she's successful, if Kim's company is successful, well then more A2B messaging, more SMSs are being sent. In other words, growth of the actual market size. And you're talking about taking it internationally, Kim. So, that's serious. It's like someone doing your job for you and you want to punish them for it. And that's what I see there. In fact, they should be supporting her in help growing and stimulating her business and so the economy of the country and so their revenue in time.
Pat, has this seeming destabilization that everyone's been talking about, is it a fairly recent occurrence? So all the massive raft of price changes that have come into effect for mobile operators, is it a recent thing, or has it actually been there, but it's just that level of increase has hit a plateau?
A
point where people are triggered.
Yeah, I told a story yesterday, like over the development of the mobile industry. If you look at the background of the CEOs, in the early days they were engineers, so they're bolting everything together and going up poles and putting up antennas and so on, right? And then when they started to load the networks, they brought in marketing CEOs. The marketing CEOs were cool, they had nice campaigns, retail outlets, loading the network, right? The current batch of CEOs are mostly accountants, and they looked on it. I'm being a bit broad brush here, I realise, please, but you understand what I mean, is that I see some people laughing down there because they know I'm going to get in trouble over it. Right? They're looking at it purely as a network that they extract as much cash from. So unfortunately, I think what you've said, both of you, it's an education process, and we can see that the guys out on the ground there are trying to do that as well.
Ben, can I come to you in Germany? And the operators collectively, obviously, you've been partnering, you've agreed, for example, on what constitutes a session in the world of RCS. So those basic things are super, super important to get right. What does the business messaging landscape look like in Germany? This whole area of commercial model, is there stability? Are you, the operators, making a special effort to ensure that at least there's stability? Obviously, you don't need to go on price, that's antitrust, but at least from a commercial model perspective, there's agreement on that side of things. Has that really helped drive business messaging in Germany?
Yeah, that's at least what I see. I mean, we hit now the 6-digit number of volumes per month. We hit the 30 bots on the published side. So I see there is now traction going up, and I believe that listening to the market and being flexible, in adapting whatever is requested and needed, like establishing, for example, a monthly active user-based pricing, because there was a real request from outside the market that if we can do a business model around that, then we can get these and that kind of use cases. And I think this shows our flexibility also around all three operators, that within a few months we developed this business model that wasn't thought about before. And now it's one of the most used pricing models around the RCS or RBM world. And if we're thinking about newsletter models, if we're thinking about all these email newsletters where you are registered, where you receive your daily offers or weekly offers, or your goal ticker of your soccer club, this wouldn't work with a standard event or session-based pricing. And so for these kind of services, we're listening to the market, we are flexible, and this is more or less dynamic. And I think this is how it could work.
Fantastic. Okay, that's a perfect example of how it can work. And we know in MEF we have an RCS market development group beyond just the commercial models. And we've got a fabulous book of use cases, a library of use cases developing. And you see certain countries around the world where the uptake on channels like RCS is great. And at least
businessmessaging.de if you are interested in some more detail around Germany.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Bernd. Now, we've gone over on this session, but this is the last panel and the last session of the whole event, so we can go over, and everyone, as long as people don't rush out of the room and head to the drinks, which are right there, the fizz, which is available right there, right now. So I'm ensuring we have no one within 10 seconds. But we've got a few minutes. The appearance of Ross means we have some questions.
Yes, we have a few questions. So we'll get started. So first one is, now enterprises like Meta, TikTok are signing A2P SMS agreements with MNOs. Will this make aggregators redundant in the ecosystem?
I would say, to me, as said, I'm signing that kind of deals with big companies, like you mentioned, but I'm not signing an A2P contract with them, so I'm not connecting them directly. They are free of choosing an aggregator of choice. They are free of changing it, I guess, twice a year, whatever is written in the contract. But I'm not handling a TikTok or however you name it directly. Maybe on the pricing end, if the volumes are like that and if they want to have that kind of lock deal or whatever. But even there, I found solutions from the accounting side of things that the aggregator can have the revenue on his books. So everything fine from that side and no competition.
Anyone else, any extra comments?
No, that's wonderful to hear.
Okay,
Yeah.
fine, thank you.
So there's a lot to unpack with this next one, so maybe just jump in wherever you feel like it. But they said that as per MEF estimates, the ARPU from business messaging is likely to go up from $525 in 2021 to up to $7.32 in 2025.
Yeah.
And RCS will be taking over the center stage in a few years to come. From where the future growth in ARPU of messaging is likely to come from? Number one, unit cost of messaging due to a higher proportion of RCS, or number two, number of messages per customer, or number three, penetration of messaging. And they also added, it is also because CPaaS operators would effectively improve the realization.
Okay, so first of all, those statistics were actually from Mobile Squared, and I'm going to turn into a very bad moderator given it's the last session, and I may voice my own personal opinion now. Can I do that? The answer is all three. So from Nick's presentation, it was very clear that move in average revenue per user, so that figure is in dollars per month per user, the increase is really thanks to rich messaging. Now, Bernd mentioned something, RBM. Throughout this event, and I can guarantee it, throughout most of RCS world, people will be just talking about RCS. And actually, it's incorrect, because RCS is just person-to-person messaging. RBM, rich business messaging, is the business messaging side of RCS. So that's just one thing to mention, and Bernd touched upon that. So first of all, the ARPU is going to be driven by an increase in not just RCS. Yes, RCS is real. RCS is coming along. If you look at some of our MEF members who are doing a great job of deploying it in Nigeria, if you look at the market in Brazil, in Mexico, thanks to alignment on the commercial model, you look at what's happening in the UK now, who have aligned on a 24-hour session, all of this work, it's starting to come real. It's been talked about so much. There have been so many false dawns with RBM, let me call it that properly, but it's finally coming real. But actually, a huge amount of that growth in the ARPU will come from other channels, rich messaging channels such as WhatsApp. And a final comment, no one has actually one person mentioned them once. Viber, now known as Rakuten Viber, they were the first business messaging chat app on the planet. Not WhatsApp, it was Viber. They were the first ones out of the gate. So yeah, so it's rich messaging is driving it. That's what's driving it. Yep. Anyone else?
I'm sure Nick sent that question and Nick.
Yeah.
It's from Anonymous.
But can I just add one point to that? I think when we talk about rich messaging services, we must take away the concept that it's RCS or RBM. I mean, I don't think that's the only barrier. There are other barriers, and SMS is a bearer of rich media messaging. Video. If you got the platform behind it. I mean, and we've had that back in 2017. I think I did a video that we always get recorded by our MEF champion, and I spoke about it then. And in 2017, I already mentioned that although we have a rich message service using SMS as a bearer, adoption was slow, even using SMS as a bearer. And that my belief, and I'll state again in 2022, that adoption of RCS is not going to be as quick as some of the stats we've seen. And I'm not talking about Mobile Squared. I think they were brave to even consider 2022 a growth year. And this is going back a few years when Nick Lane was talking about it, when most people thought SMS would be dropping down. Nick and them spoke about growth in 2022 before it peaks. But I still think that we must take away the concept of which technology it is that creates the rich experience, but it's rather the rich experience we're trying to create. Yeah. And SMS is still very relevant in that.
Perfect.
More questions, Ross?
Yes. So the next one is nice and simple. How do you ensure more than 99% SMS delivery in different kinds of region in India?
Okay, we don't have someone from India.
So,
I
who's closest?
I was in India last, but anyone know the Indian market truly well and is active there today? No, there's no one.
Okay, no, I guess I have to miss that one. That was the last question, actually. So
okay,
yeah.
So there are 1.3 billion people in India. It's it's a tough one. It's a really tough one on that one. So I think that's it for this panel. We could have talked about things so much longer. We've seen throughout the event that the commercial model, at the end of the day, and this is what this panel was designed about, you can have the most wonderful communications platform as a service, unified communications as a service, contact center as a service solutions going. You can have the best marketing, the shiniest adverts, and absolutely everything. But at the end of the day, you won't be able to sell anything to anybody if that commercial model is wrong. It's that simple. And so many great solutions in the world of business messaging have found this out the hard way. So we need to get that commercial model right. It's been a real pleasure having you, Bernd, joining us. Thank you so much for joining us from Germany, from Telefonica 02. Vladimir, thank you, and thanks to LANCK Telecom for being the prime sponsor of this event. It's been a real pleasure having you and your team who are here as well involved. Kim, a pleasure seeing you. Thank you very much for you and your ongoing contribution at MEF and being part of the working groups. Much appreciated. Carry on the good work in Gambia and beyond. Waheed, lovely seeing you as always and being so active across MEF. And Pat, very much the same to you. So, and Ross, thank you for fielding the questions.
May I just say, using my MEF hat,
Yeah.
that I just want to say well done to the MEF team. I think it's been an awesome event, very beneficial, very informative, and hopefully helps us take it to the next level.
Yeah, because we want some real impact. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you to the MEF team.
Thank you very much.